Well, a gracious good evening to you. It's the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Monday night, the 1st of March, 2021. Mr. Rayo, everything is moving along so quickly here. I mean, we're the 3 months of winter just came and went, and the three coldest months are done. And now here we are on March 1st. My God, it before you know it, it'll be Christmas again.
Meteorological spring has arrived, whether or not you want to believe it.
No, well, that's true considering what the weather is. And, well, speaking of Christmas, the Joe and Joe Weather Show is brought to you by, among other things, hang on. Oh, come
Wholesale
on.
holiday lighting
Right, by,
by Wholesale Holiday Lighting
yes,
by
by
Giannini.
Giannini. That's correct. Yes, wholesale holiday lighting by Giannini at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst. And their telephone number is 631 957 5106. The website is liholidaylighting.com. And they are your complete holiday lighting specialists. They will meet all your decorating needs, or maybe you want to decorate as a career. Give them a call, 631 957 5106. And of course, with the March being the first of 3 spring months, it's time to get your yard in order. So go to Omni True Value Hardware because they've got mulch, topsoil, sand, gravel, everything you need to get your yard in tip-top shape. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, 631 756 1125 for the best prices in town. OmniTrueValue.com. So I noticed the winds. It's just basically, Joe. It's just blowing away. Well, it was anyway. Late this afternoon, those wind gusts. I saw some gusts up into the mid 40s. It's actually a little bit lower now, but forecast gusts around sunup in some places over 40 miles an hour with temperatures in the upper teens. That brings some wind chills down to the low single digits in some places. That's cold. I don't want that.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough morning for anyone who is still commuting to work in the midst of the pandemic and who has to wait on the platform for a railroad car or waiting for a bus. It is going to be one of those. It's going to be one of the tougher mornings, actually. I mean, we've gone through. I mean, February with itself was tough because of the cold and the snow, whatever. But tomorrow morning is going to be one of those memorable mornings in terms of, as you just mentioned, Joe, wind gusts, cold temperatures. It's going to be rough. Happy spring to you all.
Yes, indeed. And we've got all sorts of wind advisories up. I'm trying to create the map on the fly. So I'll bring that up on the screen. And Joe Rayo will be monitoring the chat board because I'm on a single monitor tonight, so I can't watch it. So pass on your comments and questions, and do be kind, please. And Joe and I will try to address them and answer them forthwith. So here's the hazards map, Joe, from the Weather Service. So they've got they finally filled in the blank. They had that blank yesterday, remember,
Yes.
up in Dutchess County and in a few other spots. Well, they filled it in, and excuse me. So now everybody's under a wind advisory from most of Maryland, parts of West Virginia, northern Delaware, New Jersey, much of Pennsylvania, and New York State, except for the westernmost parts of those two states, and also the northernmost part of New York. Vermont, the western half of Vermont, all of Massachusetts, all of Connecticut, Long Island, Rhode Island. And in fact, Joe, the local offices at Upton, they actually extended the wind advisory twice, first to 10 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. Now they've pushed it all the way to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And with the strong March sun tries to heat that air up with the gradient and everything else, there's going to be a lot of mixing. It's likely to be pretty gusty right through the day and maybe even into the evening hours tomorrow.
I actually, with all due respect to what you just said, I actually believe that once we get past noontime tomorrow, that we're going to see a noticeable diminishing of the wind during the afternoon. I was kind of scratching my head, wondering why they did extend that wind advisory. And it's not saying that the winds are not going to be busy tomorrow. I could see winds gusting to 30 to 40, especially early in the day. But I honestly believe that once we get into the middle and latter part of the afternoon tomorrow, the winds will have dropped off markedly. And by tomorrow night, late tomorrow night, there'll hardly be any winds at all. The high pressure is going to be building in, and the pressure gradient is going to be untightening, so to speak, rather quickly, I think. But that's later tomorrow. Tonight and into early tomorrow, it's a whole different ball of wax, Joe.
Yeah, well, actually, when I was looking at the wind forecast, the wind gusts that they had for tomorrow during the day, it's mostly from New York City east that they've got gusts up into the 40s. This is the map. I pulled up the map for noontime, but they do have the winds lower. I mean, they have gusts in the low and mid 30s in the Hudson Valley, and of course, they've got the hole in Dutchess County where no, the wind will only gust to 24 miles an hour instead of 35 to 40 everywhere else. But it does definitely drop off in New Jersey, down in Pennsylvania, and points further south. But they just seem to be confined from New York City eastward and over Long Island. Now, tomorrow's going to be one of those days along the coast where, at least certainly for Long Island, where it could blow away well into the afternoon before the winds die off. But yeah, maybe by you, those winds should come off their peaks, I would think, during the afternoon hours.
Yeah, like I said, no question it's going to be a busy day tomorrow for the wind, especially in the morning. But I just think again that by tomorrow afternoon, I think a lot of us who might be outside might be saying like, is it over?
Yeah,
Is
well,
it beginning to wind on down? Meanwhile, Chuck Cardillo um, comments that it's snowing like crazy where he is.
oh yeah, because you know why? Because he's getting the northwest wind and the lake effect. So I'm going to go right to, you know what? Let's bring up the radar because there are some snow showers going on. Hang on a second here. Today has not been a good technology day for me. Let's just put it that way. But here's our beautiful UCAR radar, and there's some pretty hefty looking snow showers, Joe, that are up in over the Catskills right now. In fact, I will go even closer up because you know why? Because it's Chuck, and Chuck deserves to have a close up radar view here. In fact, let me loop it. Hang on a second. Let's go 3 hours, and we'll pick Binghamton. How's that? But the
I'm wondering whether or not well the way the movement is, I think that there's one batch that it'll probably pass across Poughkeepsie, but I don't think it's going to get as far south as my area unless something suddenly pops up.
well,
But it's interesting they are out there.
there's the Binghamton radar. There are some pretty hefty bands of snow there that are moving. In fact, there's one big patch there east of Binghamton. You see it there on the radar on the loop at the last frame, right in
Right.
there, right in there. That's and Chuck's on the west. He's on the west side, so he's getting all this. He gets the bonanza snowfalls when they get the northwest, the howling northwest wind like we have right now. So there's your snow shower activity there, and I'll just go back to the full U.S. loop here so you can take a look. We do have some leftover rain. In fact, it poured, Joe. It sounded like somebody had a fire hose on my roof last night. It absolutely poured around 4:30 in the morning and woke me up out of a lovely sound sleep. But this is what's left of the weather front now, running across North Carolina, northern Georgia, northern Alabama, back down into Louisiana and East Texas. We don't have any severe weather going on. And in fact, I had a full blown wind shift here. I'm down my temperature went from near 60 this morning to mid 40s by late afternoon. So I'm chilling down in a big hurry. And the rest of the U.S. is snooze fest. Nothing on, nothing going on radar wise. Very, very quiet. For granted, I think this would qualify for the March Lion with the wind. But in terms of overall storminess across the United States, I mean, you've got this flat front. Look at the satellite. There's just the stream of moisture running southwest and northeast across the Gulf states and off the Carolina coast and then out into the open waters of the Atlantic. You got a little bit of moisture coming into the Pacific Northwest that's coming over the top and into the northern plains. Other than that, there's nothing. I mean, it's just no major storms, no minor storms, just a very relatively quiet week outside of what's going on with the wind in the Northeast.
Now, Matt K on the chat board is asking you, do you use your weighted blanket in Georgia, Joe
Oh
Chico?
yeah. Oh, I have three weighted blankets. Yes, so my weighted comforter, my 20-pound weighted comforter. Yes, I do. I'm 2,200 feet up here, so it gets cold up here in the mountains at night, especially at night. We get down. I mean, I've had a lot of days that I've been down here on and off in the last 2 months, where it's been down in the 20s, and on some of the time that I was back up in February and I was following the weather along, there were a number of nights here where the temperatures were down in the mid-teens. So it does get cold up here. It really does. And tonight's
Hmm,
gonna. I have the fireplace going tonight.
really?
Yes, I do.
No. Might give Renata some ideas. We haven't started one of our fireplaces in a while.
Well, did she chop enough wood in the fall? Did you make it through the season?
We have plenty of wood. We have
uh,
plenty of wood, plenty of wood, plenty of kindling, if you will.
yes. No, I love.
The very funny thing, and the very funny thing is, we got those from I don't know where we got them from. I think somebody gave them to us. Those artificial logs.
Oh yeah. No.
Uh,
No. I'm not doing that.
but the thing is, we've had them now. I think for like 10 years. We've hardly ever used them.
Yeah.
We just use the regular wood.
They don't give off any heat. Those
No,
artificial logs, they give
so
off.
they're just for decorative
Yeah,
purposes.
no, but that's not the point of the fireplace, is so that you can get cozy and warm. Not that it had to, not
Correct.
that it'll look pretty,
Right.
but no matter. Anyway, at least from the standpoint of this week and through this weekend and into next week, Joe, I really don't see any major storms. And in fact, I'm predicting that we could have a rather sizable warm up next week. I don't know if you take a look at anything today.
I no, I absolutely agree with that. And in fact, one of the local forecasters here in the New York area, who will go nameless, went for a high temperature next Monday in New York of 38 degrees. And I'm kind of scratching my head and saying, how do you end up with a 38-degree temperature? Everything that I've looked at here exactly agrees with what you just said. I think we're going to see a big warm up starting at the beginning of next week, if not maybe a little sooner. So where do you get 38
Yeah,
degrees from?
the only thing that slows it up, and we're talking about maybe for one day, is that if you got this trough along the East Coast, so that's got to pull out. So if for some reason it pulls out a little bit slower, which sometimes it does that, it's not going to make any difference other than the fact that as far as precip or anything like that, because we're not going to we're not going to see any. But if the trough takes a little bit longer to pull out, it might delay the warm up, but the warm up's coming, whether it comes on Monday or Tuesday. I would think that as soon as the trough starts to pull to the east, temperatures will jump immediately into the 40s, and then the day that follows, I'm thinking that we could you could have a run into the 60s at some point next week for a day or two.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what's going to stop
absolutely.
it. I really didn't see any. The only thing for the immediate coast is the sea breeze, is the south wind and the sea breeze, which this time of year, kicks in almost automatically. So that would impact those areas. But unless you're living right along the coast, I'm thinking, the warm up is gonna cover a good portion of the eastern part of the United States, in my never to be humble
Right.
opinion. Okay, good. We're on
Oh
the
no,
same page with that.
I believe it. I believe it. And in fact, if you want to share, you want to share a screen here.
Oh, sure. Hold on. You let me get you control. Uh, let's see. Yeah, go ahead.
All righty.
You may now share the screen.
So here you go. This is the Climate Prediction Center, and these are the people who specialize in long-range forecasts. These are just probabilities. They're probabilities in terms of temperature and also in terms of precipitation. You're seeing their temperature probability map. And as you can see, we are within the zone between the 9th and 15th of March, the 8 to 14 day outlook of 60 to 70% for above normal temperatures, which would pretty much spell out, Joe, that you're right. I think temperatures in that time frame will hit maybe even more than once 60 degrees. Dare I say, maybe, by mid-month, by the 15th, the Ides of March, we might even be talking about temperatures up here now, not down where you are, but up here, maybe trying to approach 70. Would that be nice?
No,
Especially
look,
consider.
under the right conditions, there's nothing that stops it. If you get, it's one thing if you get a west southwest flow that lasts all of one day, okay, where you get a cold high that goes out and you get a west southwest flow for a day. That's just something like Wednesday of this week, when this first high pulls out. It's not sitting there long enough to produce warmer air, essentially. So you need a high that's going to sit there in the east for more than 24 hours, and you're going to get that next week. I'm starting to think, just judging from what I've been seeing on and what the Climate Prediction Center is seeing with respect to the longer term, even beyond this period, is the fact that um, the polar vortex in the stratosphere is all of a sudden decided to get very strong, and it's going, if that's the case, we may actually, I'm thinking we may see everything be more on the warmish side as we go through the rest of this month, and maybe going into the beginning of April. It's kind of backwards. The vortex was weak through the winter. It split several times in January. We saw what happened for those 3 weeks in February, of course, and now it's decided to get strong. I'll bring it up on the map in a minute, and you'll be able to see that. Uh, but I think I'm going to throw in the towel on my idea, maybe that there's going to be a window of opportunity for some snow around the middle of the month. I'm thinking now maybe that's not going to happen.
Doesn't seem that way. Okay, we're also into that time of the year where, in the tri-state New York area, you've got places, north and west of New York City that sometimes will go, well into the 60s to around 70. And then at the same time that's happening, with a light, even just a light southerly breeze, places along the Sound Shore of Westchester and especially along the south coast of Long Island, stuck in the
In the
40s to around
40s,
50.
and
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes with fog, and also for the Jersey Shore too. The same thing with the south wind. Let's see, the WPC folks on their surface map this evening actually analyze a bunch of fronts. They got one off the Carolina coast, one coming off the Carolina coast, and yet a third that's coming down through upstate New York. Now, that's probably helping to produce those snow showers that Chuck is seeing in the Catskills. But it's behind that we've got, and this was at 5 o'clock. So now that it's 8 o'clock, that front's probably down near the coast. This is cold air that we're talking about here. That is with this high in Minnesota, and cold Canadian air that's coming down. The gradient is fairly tight and probably getting a little tighter during the overnight, with a low near Nova Scotia and deepening, and of course the 1032 high, large pressure change over a relatively short distance, and you've got a tight gradient, and therefore you get into the wind. WPC over the next 7 days, and this takes us to, let's see if I can freshen this map up. This takes us into Monday evening, and except for stuff in upstate New York, in and around the lakes, Joe, no precip for the next 7 days for much of Maine, eastern and southern New England, the northern mid-Atlantic states, down to almost down to southern Virginia before you get to the .01 line. So we may go at least 7 days without any precip. And that extends, by the way, virtually, for whatever light precip that's being shown, for, for all intents and purposes, the entire northern half of the United States, north of 35 degrees north, doesn't get any precip. Now that changes in the Rockies in Colorado, over into Nebraska, Oklahoma, and back over into Utah. Probably going to see some snow out there in the west, and you're seeing also rains up and down California and up into the Pacific Northwest. But a large portion of the country is going to be bone dry, bone dry.
In contrast, the south end of your state, Georgia, looks like they will pick up maybe as much as 3 or 4 inches between now and the beginning of next week.
Yeah, two waves. The first one that'll move through for Tuesday night, Wednesday, which means that hopefully I get a little bit of dry time tomorrow because it rained this morning, then it stopped. Not doing anything now, just a lot of clouds. So I'm hoping the rain holds off so that I can get a little bit of exercise time tomorrow at the park. And oh, by the way, I went looking for dogs today, just so you know.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Oh, that's
I've been
lovely.
without. It's been a few years since
It's been what, about 2 years now, right?
Uh, it's been
A
like
little over 2 years, or just
I
about two
think
years.
I think it's 3 years. I think it's 3 years now that Cody has crossed over on the Rainbow Bridge. It's time for me to get a new dog. So I looked at two of them. I looked at two dogs, and I'm thinking about it because it's responsibility, and I don't want to take it lightly. But both dogs that I looked at were very nice. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to sleep on it.
Now, let's say you do get a dog, and you said you are going to come back at least one more time up here.
Yeah, I'll bring the
So
dog
what does
with
that
me.
mean?
I'll bring the dog with me.
Really? So that
Yeah.
means the dog is going to be a relatively small dog.
No, I'm not. I don't think so. I'm not getting a Great Dane. Let's put it that way.
Right.
It's a mid-sized dog. A mid-sized dog.
Okay.
I mean, I can't. I don't want to
Okay.
get a small dog here, Joe, because there's hawks and eagles and things, and if it's outside, I don't want it to become. I don't want it to become, a raptor's lunch.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
I
um,
understand.
yeah. All right. So let's
I,
see.
I had a Yorkie. I had a Yorkie, and one time I saw a red-tailed hawk just circling above us,
Yeah.
probably saying like, "Get that human out of the way so I can have some dinner." So
Yeah. And
yeah, you're right.
I was driving on the local highway here, going into the next town. Yes, on Sunday. It was yesterday. Yes, no, Saturday. And on my way back, um, there was a couple of vultures landed. As I was going by because there was a dead squirrel and they were having a feast. And
Yeah.
those were pretty large birds. I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not taking any chances with any raptors with a small dog. So
Yeah.
anyhow, so there's really not a whole lot happening here, folks, other than this storm that is now intensifying in eastern Canada, and the shot of cold air that we talked about last week that's coming down. There's a wave on the stalled frontal boundary that comes out of the central Gulf. You can see the rain in the southeast that moves offshore Wednesday morning. Maybe some high clouds come up halfway up the coast out of that. At the same time, Joe, there's another weak cold front that comes through late on Wednesday, and that brings in the next big high coming down from the north. This shot of cold air is not quite as cold as what this shot is. It probably will get breezy again, but after that high goes out, on Saturday we have another wave that moves across the Gulf, that comes out of down from Oklahoma across Florida, and because we have a blocking pattern here that's so strong, this thing is getting suppressed way to the south. Not going to be a factor here. Once that goes out, that starts the setup for the warmer temperatures next week. And you see how the surface high drops from eastern Canada to the Virginia, North Carolina coast, and then suddenly starting on yeah, you know what? I'm looking at this, Joe. The cold air takes a little longer to pull out on Monday. 38 might be too low, but it does take a little bit longer to pull out on Monday. But certainly by Tuesday, because by Monday night and Tuesday, we're into a west-southwest wind, and that holds all week. There's nothing that comes, as far as a front is concerned. The next one just kind of falls apart before it gets here on Friday. And then you got backdoor issues with some kind of storm that goes over to the Western Lakes. So it looks like we have a very quiet stretch ahead.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, at this time next week, there's probably going to be a ridge of high pressure that extends right along the Atlantic seaboard, all the way from Maine, all the way down the coast to Florida. And
Yeah.
as we move through the course of the day, and again, you got to take into account. I'm I'm not getting into this in terms of snow or whatever, but the angle of the sun is considerably higher now than it was just a few weeks ago. So
Oh,
that
you
that could
feel it.
go well to,
You feel it.
yeah,
You definitely
yeah,
feel it.
absolutely.
And I'm looking here. There's there's a weak low at the end of the week. The one that comes out of Oklahoma doesn't really produces a bit of snow in the Rockies there in the Colorado Rockies. There's action in the west with some rain and snow into California uh, next week. It's much more active in the western half of the United States, but that's because the ridge is in the east and the trough is in the west. So I'm not really, yeah, it's hard to see. I mean, by the time we get to the end of the forecast period here, we're at March 17th. Now, at this point, at the end of the period, of course, there's some colder air that's coming down, but we're almost to St. Patrick's Day at this stage of the game. I'm really starting to wonder, here that we could wind up going, that this may be one of those Marches where we get very little in the way of snow.
It figures.
Right, because you need that
And I'm not asking
1.6.
1.4.
1.4. I'm sorry. Here's the stratosphere, and just to show you everybody what's happening with the polar vortex. As I was saying earlier, this thing has decided. I'm going to go back. There's missing frames on the 18Z run, so let me just go back to the 12Z run, so we have a full set. But if you take a look, it's kind of elongated north-south here at the start, but as we move through time, the rest of this week and into next week, the vortex actually not only migrates up toward Siberia and Russia, but it actually strengthens. It's stronger now, Joe. This polar vortex is stronger now than almost any time it was during January and February. And what that's doing is it's basically wrapping up all the cold air up in Siberia and um, up in the Arctic regions, and then the polar vortex actually swings around and starts to drop southward again as we head toward mid-month. But you got to figure that anything that goes on up there is going to be about a 2 week lag, so it's going to weaken. It's because it has to. We're going into the spring. This polar vortex is unusually strong, but it is going to weaken. But by the time it does that, and you have a couple of weeks of lag time to translate into the lower levels of the atmosphere, then you're into the first or second week of April. So I'm thinking this is going to be a very tough sell for another snowfall. Maybe now that I've thrown in the towel, that'll be the magic indicator of something happening. But it just doesn't.
I want to straighten up. I want to straighten something out on the chat board here. Keith James II says that this is in reference to my comment about a minute or two ago about the sun angle and how with the higher sun angle, it could feel and get milder than it was just a month or so ago. And he says, that's funny about the sun angle. I brought it up 10 days ago on here and was mocked. The reason we had some joke.
We don't mock.
10 days ago, I think you brought up the fact that the sun angle could reduce the possibility of any significant snow accumulation. And what I'm talking about is just in terms of temperature, how you could have a cloudy, dreary day at this time of the year now, and it could be in the 30s or even near 40. All you need is the sun, and because of that higher sun angle, the temperature can jump just based on the sun angle, like 10 or 12 degrees into the 50s. That's really what I'm making note of here in terms of temperature. I think you were bringing up the fact that the sun angle was going to keep the snow accumulations down because of the higher angle and whatever, and also the warmth of the ground. And, 10 days, 2 weeks ago is one thing. We've advanced quite a bit in these last couple of weeks in terms of the higher angle of the sun.
Right, and
you were talking about it 10 days ago. We were still in mid-February, for God's sake.
Right, and you can't make a blanket statement about sun angles' impact on snow accumulation until you know exactly what you're dealing with, because as you and I have pointed out, have said many times, and I know I'm a big, I've been hammering this idea uh, intensity trumps everything. Okay, if you're snowing at rates of an inch an hour or more, okay, I don't care what. I mean, unless you're in April, and even then it can be accomplished. But if you're snowing at rates of an inch an hour or more, the sun angle's not going to really matter very much. And the quote unquote warm ground is a fallacy, because when you have a snowstorm, and when I'm talking a snowstorm, I'm talking about something that produces, heavy amounts of snow, not something that comes along and, it's a coating to an inch or two. But if you're dealing with something that's going to produce a significant snowfall, and you and I have both seen it where it's been in the 60s and even in the 70s the day before, and then you wind up, with snow-covered roads, and within 20 minutes or 30 minutes of snowfall happening. So you have to kind of look at each situation individually. And by the way, none of this, obviously the sun angle does not, doesn't matter when it snows at night. So I just have a real problem. I don't sit here when I make a forecast and say, I'm going to make a stove, the date, whatever the date is. I'm not looking to see, well, where's the sun angle here on this date? Just because that's going to impact how much snow I'm going to forecast. Just not going to do, I just don't work that way. And I don't think most forecasters do. So anyway, just to clarify, we don't mock. We were just having a teensy bit of fun. Let's put it like that.
Well, take a look, Joe. How about what we've seen in this season? This season,
Yeah.
I think it was back in September, September the 8th. Remember, we were talking about in Denver, it was 90 degrees,
Yes.
and the very next
Yes.
day it was snowing and
Yes.
sticking. So there you go.
Exactly. Precisely.
So there you
I'm
are.
glad you remembered that. Where's Ruthless Goat? Because he's usually when he's watching. He's from that area. He can testify exactly to what happened. And sun angle, warm ground, and everything else. You're right. It was 90 degrees the day before, and some places got hammered with snow the next day. So
My
anyway,
sister, my sister Lisa was up for a job at the Children's Television Workshop, which makes Sesame Street. That would have been a big thing for her to get this particular job. Her assignment, she had to write a whimsical story, and she wrote a story about how I think Cookie Monster and Grover and a couple of the other characters, they were out, they had their sunglasses on. It was like 90 degrees, hot, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the sketch, it starts to snow. And she thought it was very funny. And again, it was supposed to be a whimsical story. And the head of the Children's Television Workshop, I won't mention his name because I don't remember what his name is, but basically told my sister, he said, "This is so stupid. It's one thing to be whimsical. Why are you writing about something that can never happen, that cannot possibly happen? Snow, sunshine, and heat, hot one day, and snow that." She didn't get the job, and she tells me about this, and I said, "You want me to write this guy a nasty letter because it has happened and it will happen, and it did, and it has
yeah,
happened since." You
yep.
can you can have those cases where you could have incredible heat in one day and then the very next day. And we've even seen it here in New York City. But oh well.
Well, let's do a little bit of Briller Jeopardy and have some fun tonight. Since we don't have any storms to look at. And by the way, through all of this, just want to mention SPC, the Storm Prediction Center, has no severe weather in their forecast for the next 4 days. So they're also looking at this and saying, you know what, it looks kind of quiet. So, all right. So let's tonight's category for Mr. Rayo is television. Okay. So you should be able to, you should work well with this.
It's interesting because they had a category on Jeopardy tonight. TV shows uh, that debuted in 1984, which was also the year that the new version of Jeopardy debuted. So that was an interesting category. So what's your category on Briller
All
Jeopardy?
right. So
Uh,
question number one, the highest, well, this one you'll know, the highest rated TV series finale.
oh, that has to be MASH, right?
Correct. Yes, that is correct. Question
Something like
two.
110 million people watch that. So
Yes. Question two, the longest running drama TV show.
dramatic. TV
Yes.
show?
Yes.
Well, back in the day, you could have, if you counted Gunsmoke as a drama, you could have said that. But um, let's see, drama. Hmm. It wouldn't be Grey's Anatomy, would it?
No. It's
Drama.
it's still on, I think. It's
Well, so is Grey's Anatomy.
yeah, well that's no, that doesn't count. Um uh it has all
General
those
Hospital.
no terminal hospital. No, no. This is it's a primetime drama. It's had all these spin off, it's spun off a whole bunch of shows too.
I don't know. Law and Order.
But okay, Law and Order. Which one?
Oh, you mean it's like NCIS, San Diego,
Yeah,
Philadelphia,
right,
Hawaii,
right.
or
So
whatever?
it's
I have.
Law and Order SVU, or as I like to call it, Law and Order SUV, which is a drama about murders committed inside sport utility vehicles. 22 seasons, by the way. All right.
22.
Yes.
Wait, but Gunsmoke was on for. But again, is Gunsmoke considered a drama?
All
Even
right.
though
So
it's
well, so okay. So let's. Well, no, because Gunsmoke really was. I think wouldn't that genre be Western?
yeah, but westerns can be dramatic, can't they? Or
Right, but dramas, not all dramas are westerns. Westerns can be dramas, but can dramas be
okay,
westerns?
whatever.
Anyway, what non-sports TV show led the Nielsen ratings the most consecutive years? And it went from 2004 to 2011. So for 8 years. What non-sports TV show?
Now, did I mention this before? Was it Grey's Anatomy?
No, no, no. This
No.
show actually went off the air and now is back on the air on another network.
Well, there are a lot of shows that have done that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first show that ever did that was My Three Sons. They went from ABC to CBS.
This is
So
CBS. No, yeah, you're right. Hazel also went I believe from
NBC to CBS.
NBC to and CBS ruined it. Okay, so yeah, so this show from 2004 to 2011 for 8 consecutive seasons.
I have no clue. You also, you know what, Joe? You and I both, worked a number of years during the evening, and we didn't watch TV
Right. Well,
during
I'll give you
during
the
prime
answer.
time.
I'll give you the
Okay,
answer. So it's American Idol.
American Idol.
Right. So now, question 4. What TV series now in its 32nd record season? Okay.
Um, The Simpsons.
Correct. And now, finally, we can get to what you've been bringing up a couple of times already. From 1955 to 1985, what was the longest running show that lasted 20 seasons?
Gunsmoke.
That's it. You finally got your Gunsmoke.
I finally got my Gunsmoke. And by the way, for those of you who were fans, and there are a lot of you I know of a certain age, of My Three Sons,
Do
probably
do do do
one of
do
the
do
top
do
one of the
do do
top five
do.
My Three Son episodes is going to air tomorrow morning at the ungodly hour of 6:30. So if you have Me TV, it'll be on tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. Again, one of the top five most remembered My Three Son episodes is when Ernie, the bespectacled little guy of the show, when Ernie makes friends
With
with Zsa
Chip.
Zsa Gabor.
Oh, with Zsa Zsa?
With Zsa Zsa
God.
Gabor. I guess, on one of the Hollywood tours with his
Hmm.
dog Tramp, and somehow or other runs into Zsa Zsa. And when he comes home, nobody in his house believes him that he calls her Miss Zsa Zsa. I haven't seen this episode myself in the God knows like 40 some odd years or whatever. I'm actually thinking about getting up tomorrow morning to 6:30 to watch it. He kept calling her Miss Zsa Zsa.
Well, why can't you
And
DVR it?
Oh, I don't know how to do that, Joe.
Well,
Neither does my wife.
oh, yeah, she knows how to
She went
do
to the dark.
She knows how to
She
do
went to the dark
everything.
ages.
Oh, please. Brandon Doherty hitting super chat tonight. Thank you, Brandon, very much for doing that. We appreciate it. Um, Mr. Ruben Fairchild says, "What is Gunsmoke?" Uh,
Oh,
Look it up. James Arness was the star of Gunsmoke, and what was her face is right in front of me. Who played the female lead?
Miss Kitty.
Yeah,
Miss Kitty.
who
I
played
don't
Miss?
know. I don't.
Oh no, it's like her face is right in front of me. I know her name, and I can't remember what it was or what her name is.
Did you know that Gunsmoke was a very popular radio show that actually ran concurrently with the television version?
Yes.
In fact, James Arness was introduced to the television public by John Wayne on the very first episode of Gunsmoke, because a lot of people said, "Well, Marshall Dillon must be played by John Wayne," and John Wayne came and said, "Listen, I don't have the time to do this, but you're going to
I
need
don't
James Arness
have the
to
time to do a
do
TV
that."
show.
But who was the man who played Marshall Dillon on radio and played a damn good Marshall Dillon on radio, but couldn't do it for one specific reason or one obvious reason? If you saw him in front of you,
um, Wally Cox.
William Conrad.
Oh yes. Oh, and in fact, it's funny you bring up William Conrad. I'll get to it in a second. I just wanted the chairman hitting super chat tonight. Thank you. How many days in February did Central Park receive at least a trace of snow? I don't remember. The February
This
just
past
passed.
February. Oh, well,
So
it seemed like it snowed every day. For
yes, it
God's sake,
did.
I'll I'll say like 21.
So you bring up William Conrad. It's so funny because I was watching American movie classics the other day, which I watch a lot, and there was a movie that was actually directed by a really bad horror movie starring Connie Stevens, Cesar
Oh,
Romero, and then
oh,
a few other more familiar character actors too. And it was called Two on a Guillotine. And it was just, I mean, it was Joe. It was one of these movies that was, it's so bad that it's good type of
yeah.
movie. And I was reading the reviews. I was reading about the movie. I looked up, I did a little research. I saw that William Conrad had, and actually William Conrad had directed a few of these kind of horror movies in the early '60s, but the reviews were just scathing, just how awful this was. But it was a surprise to me that he directed that, and that was right around the time that he was also doing the voice of on Rocky the Flying Squirrel.
That's no, he didn't do the voice of
No,
Rocky. He
the
was the guy who
what
did the narration.
the narration. I'm sorry, the narration.
Right.
Yeah, so
Well, it
that's
looks like Boss and Natasha are going to get it again. Tune in again tomorrow for, and they would do a bad pun
right,
for the
exactly.
episode.
Yeah, no, just
But
kind
that
of
was hard to believe that he did that voice.
yeah,
When
yeah. Uh,
if you heard him on radio he had a very strong, bassy type of voice. And obviously, a lot of people were asking, well, how come the guy who does the voice of Matt Dillon on the radio isn't the one who's going to play Matt Dillon on television? And if you remember William Conrad, he played Cannon, and he also played the Fat Man in Jake and the Fat Man. Once you saw him, it's obvious why he couldn't play Marshall Dillon.
Yes. Mr. Ruben Fairchild says a scientist can't figure out how to use a DVR, can't make it up. And then he says, old, old, old. Have a little respect, for God's sake. Jesus. Everybody gets to a certain age, and I've said this, everybody reaches a certain age where they just absolutely refuse to learn how to anything new. And that's everybody. So, Mr.
I don't
Reuben
remember.
Fairchild, you will one day be old, and you will not want to learn how to do new things. So just
I
bear
don't
that in
remember
mind.
exactly. I don't remember exactly what the year was, but at one of the News 12 Christmas parties, I actually won one of these DVR, Bluetooth recording machines. It's still in the original box. never opened it.
You know,
It's still it's upstairs somewhere. You know, and when you consider the fact that I've not been at News 12 now in 5 years, that gives you the idea about how long that thing has been in its
yeah.
original
Well,
box.
if you have,
For
I,
all I know, the damn thing might be obsolete by now.
well, you don't even need it, Joe. If you've got Optimum, you can go on the box with your remote and set the DVR and just pay.
Really?
Yeah, you just bring you pull up the guide. Okay, I think you hit the DVR button on your remote. You pull up the guide. You scroll to the show you want to record. You press enter, and then it does it. It's all set. I had mine recording Perry Mason every morning and every night because I wasn't
Uh-huh.
staying up till 11:30 to watch Perry Mason, so I would watch it the next day. But
Well,
it's real easy to do if you've got the remote. So give it to
yeah.
Mrs. Rayo.
Well,
She'll figure it out. We're not. She'll figure it out. I mean, you married a genius. She
I'm doing
knows how
all
to
of
do
this. I'm
everything.
doing all of this for Jaja, right?
Yes. Oh, good Lord.
I
Anyway,
think the best part of that episode was at the very end when Fred McMurray and William Demarest look at each other when Jaja come at the end of the show. You know, after they mocked, there's that word again, mocked Ernie for claiming that he met Jaja Gabor. There's a knock at their door, and who shows up? But Jaja. Well, I want to just say it was so lovely with my friend Ernie. The last thing but it's like one of the most memorable episodes of My Three Sons.
this
And
is. Uh,
in fact, Barry Livingston, who played the role of Ernie, when he did an interview with American Television Classics or Archives or whatever, they asked him about that episode, and he just like started laughing uncontrollably. I mean, who's going to believe that a 12-year-old kid is going to run into Zsa Zsa Gabor?
do 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 do. Listen, Fred McMurray. Fred McMurray had the charmed life. He. You ever read the story about how they used to film that show? He would show
Right, they
up.
filmed it around him.
Yeah, he would show up for work for like 2 days a month, and he would shoot all his scenes. And I didn't realize it until after I read it, and then I looked for it on the episodes. But you'll see a lot of cutaway shots. So
Right.
he didn't even have to be there, or or where it's like you see the back of him, so they could have a stand-in, uh, and
Right.
you would see the back of someone that was pretending to be Fred McMurray. Yeah, he had a charmed life because he got rich on uranium up in Nevada or something. He had some kind of uranium mine that he invested in and made millions of dollars. And he and his wife, June. Oh, good Lord.
June Haver or
Yes, June Haver. Um,
right.
yeah, he and his wife. So they basically, lived semi-retired, rich lives. And he would come down 2 days a month, film whatever scenes he needed to film for whatever, for all the episodes that they were doing, and then he would, go away for the other 28 days and get paid oodles and oodles
Exactly.
of money. And he was,
Yeah, the only time he ever made anything on that show was at the very beginning when he would look straight into the camera and say, "Hi, welcome to our show for Hans Katzer."
yes, and he played this father figure, and it was how I guess the best way to describe him was he was probably the calmest father that you could watch him and you say, I want him to be my dad because he would never yell at me. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
but yet when you look at Fred McMurray, and he played it very well, but he played some really despicable characters in his career. In the
Yeah.
Caine Mutiny, he played a Navy officer that had absolutely no conscience, and also in Double Indemnity with the Barbara Stanwyck. Now he played also a number of comedy roles and good character roles, but he had a
Right.
very well-rounded career. Uh, Playing all sorts of playing the entire spectrum of good and evil. I always respect actors that can when I see old movies and I see them playing these different parts where they're stretched. He was very
The
talented
Shaggy,
man.
the Shaggy Dog, and Son of Flubber.
Yeah, I mean, he did
Well,
movies
well,
like that, and then he does Double
right.
Indemnity and the Kane Mutiny with Humphrey Bogart, Jose Ferrer, Van
Right.
Johnson. Just uh,
And that one guest shot on the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour.
yeah, exactly. Which they shot in 2 days because he only works 2 days a month.
That's right. One time, did you remember that scene where they were supposed to go up or come down a mountain
Right.
real fast in a convertible or whatever, and they just couldn't make the shot, and finally Desi Arnaz uttered in Spanish a couple of expletives, got in the car and did the scene perfectly, going up and coming down again, whatever. And he comes out of the car and somebody said, Desi, that was great, but we weren't filming.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, all those funny stories. I gotta get out my TV trivia books and go through those again. Refresh my mind.
All
Some
right,
of the
before
funny
we go,
stories of the day.
we're five shy of 100 likes. So now would you please, if you have not hit the
Oh,
like
he's gonna
button,
start begging
hit
again.
hit the like button so we can close this out, or else we're going to be here for the rest of the night and we're going to be talking about Chuck Cunningham, the missing brother on Happy Days.
Do 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 do. Well, you know what? What about the missing brother on My Three Sons? Because
Right,
the
Jim
old
Considine.
right and he they wrote him off, and you never heard about him again. Wasn't even not even a mention. And then later in
Right,
the series, was it Rob Grady who played the oldest brother?
right.
He left the
He gets
show.
married. He gets married to Katie,
Right, Tina
Tina Cole,
Cole.
one of the right,
And has triplets for God's sake. So she's having triplets. He decides the way they wrote the character out was that he joins the Peace Corps. Sure, I'm going to
yeah,
join the Peace Corps. I'm going to leave my pregnant wife with, carrying triplets. I'm going to go work in the Peace Corps. You could only get away with
actually
something like that in the 60s.
he got into a real row with the producers of My Three, Don Fedderson, who also produced Family Affair,
Yes.
Mr. French. But he got into a big argument after he got married to Katie. They were still doing scenes in the bedroom with twin beds, and he's screaming at them, saying, "This is 1960 blankety eight." He said, "Why are we still doing this? Why don't we show one bed instead of?" I guess to appease him. Then that's when Katie got pregnant and had the triplets to demonstrate that they weren't in the twin beds.
Mr.
But
Reuben Fairchild, they hid his message, but I unhid it. He said, "Can we talk about something modern on television?" Jeez. Okay. No, we can't. We're old. Just like you said,
oh,
we're old. Okay.
all right, my
We come from a time where you had to actually change the channel by turning a dial.
right. My wife just went on the chat board and said, "Thank you, everyone, and have a good night." That's the signal because we have 108 likes. So, Joe, I guess we might as well.
All right. So we'll
Close
see
it.
everybody tomorrow at 7:30. Right? Tomorrow's regular time, correct?
Tomorrow's a regular time. Wednesday,
Will be
it'll
later.
be 8. It'll
Okay.
be 8:30.
All right. So we'll see everybody tomorrow at 7:30. And thanks for the super chat hits from the chairman and from Brandon Doherty. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.